Do you remember the last time when you had to perform a large upgrade in your organization, such as upgrading the version of Java or C++ across multiple projects, and the task of coordinating it across multiple teams turned out to be a Sisyphean task, an immense struggle? I certainly do remember such situations in my career, and thankfully I can come to you today with some proposition of a solution, because today we will dive into the world of monorepos, where with just one atomic commit you can make groundbreaking changes. With that, hello everyone, nice to meet you here. My name is Szymon Sadowski. I'm a software engineer at Sabre Corporation, where for the past several couple dozens of months I've been involved in developing the Monorepo platform at Sabre, and today I wanted to share some knowledge and experience related to that to help you decide if it may be a good choice for you. So if you'd like to learn if Monorepo might be right choice for you, if you'd like to learn why monorepos are useful, how to make them right, or perhaps if you should stick to the standard Polyrepo approach, this is the right place for you, and we're gonna explore that today. So this right here is gonna be our agenda for today. We'll start with explaining what is the monorepo to be on the same page. Then we will proceed to exploring some advantages and disadvantages of the monorepo. Then we will see what, in particular for Java, what benefits can it bring. And at the end, we will see and answer this question from the title of this presentation. What is the right choice for you, Polyrepo or Monorepo? So, as promised, let's start with this question. So, what actually is the monorepo? And the answer to that is pretty simple, because it's storing multiple projects in just one single repository. So, pretty simple, huh? But you might say, wait a second, isn't it a horrible idea? Because as we begin our careers as software engineers, we are taught those fundamental principles that we should strive for modularization, isolation, and we should keep separate projects in separate repositories, right? But you see big players like Google, Microsoft, Uber, and Airbnb, they are all employing this monorepo strategy to their advantage. They are breaking this rule and gaining some advantage from that. So what is actually the deal here? And it turns out that, as in many things in life and in software engineering as well, there is a lot of analogy to chess. Maybe we'll do a quick show of hands who plays chess or knows the rules. Okay, we have quite a few chess enthusiasts. But for those of you who are not familiar with chess, I'll try to keep it clear. So as we learn the basic rules, then we are taught some fundamentals, like you should strive to control the middle of the board, or you want to develop your pieces as quickly as possible. So you are taught those principles, and your trainers say you that you should always strive to follow those principles. However, as you start to study the games of the grandmasters, it turns out that they are breaking those rules all over the place. which actually reminds me of one of my favorite posts on Reddit ever. So it goes like this, that when a grandmaster pushes their pawns, they have, space advantage and clamp down on the opponent positions. But when I do that, I am overextending and creating weaknesses. So there is some kind of duality here. So what is actually the deal here? Why big players like big tech companies like Google, Uber, Microsoft can break this rule of storing multiple projects in one repository and gain some advantage from that? And why grandmasters can break those rules, those fundamental rules, and also in certain situations gain some advantage? Answer to that is pretty simple. You can do that if you are prepared and you are not know what you are doing and how to utilize such a situation to your advantage. So as we begin this presentation, let this be my promise for you that at the end of the presentation, we'll know a little bit more when it is okay to break this rule of one project per one repository. And just to give some credibility to what I'm saying here, I wanted to share some statistics about the Monorepo that I'm currently involved in developing, just to give you a sense of scale that we are dealing with. So as you can see, we have 400 unique monthly contributors, 400 engineers contributing to the Monorepo. Every month we build 100,000 CI builds, and every month we merge 3,000 pull requests. We have more than 1,000 projects, be it HTTP services, gRPC services, UI, libraries, configuration packages, and so on. We've got over 1,000 of those. And what's also particularly interesting is that more than, around half of the code of this Monorepo is written in Java, so it's very Java-centric. So we will also touch upon some advantages that I've seen in such Java-focused Monorepo. All right. Now let's start exploring what can we gain from using Monorepo. And to answer that question, let me tell you a simple story. So imagine this situation. You are at the office on Monday. You are debugging something. It's a very long and tiresome session. You think that you found the final solution of some problem that you've struggled with for a while. So you decided to code it up quickly and run a bunch of tests to confirm if your fix is correct. And it's going to run, let's say, for 1 hour. So since you're very exhausted, you go figure that you are going to grab a cup of coffee from the kitchen. You go to the kitchen, the coffee pot is empty, but you shrug your shoulders, saying to yourself that you'll make some new brew. You reach for the cupboard, there's no coffee there, but you remember that down the hall in the supply cabinet there should be extra coffee bag. But to your despair, it is locked. But you remember that Bob from the second floor has keys to this cabinet. You go there to his cabinet, but there's a note that he's out of office. Janice from building across the street stands in for him. You go there, but she says that she doesn't have the keys. You quickly text your friend Samantha that asking for advice. She tells you that in the mini kitchen, in the original building on the second floor, there should be a coffee bag. So you go there, you bash into the kitchen, you open the cupboard, you reach for the bag of coffee, there it is, finally. But as you touch it, your heart sinks because the coffee is not grinded. There is only coffee beans in the bag. So you come up with this idea to wrap the beans in a towel and smash it with the hammer. And for a quick moment, you think to yourself, how did I get here? It's ridiculous. For making coffee, I need hammer. How ridiculous it is. But you don't think about it any longer. You find hammer, you find towel, smash the beans, you manage to get some grinded coffee, and you finally want to make the coffee, but in the coffee machine, the coffee filter is old and soggy, you need to throw it out and there is no replacement. So you go to the Starbucks down the road for the building, grab a cup of coffee, go back to your desk and see that tests are failing. So what a way to start the week at the office, right? And this situation, I think, might be strangely familiar to many of us. It's called dependency hell. Dependency hell is a situation like this. So I have something that a lot of us might be familiar with, a bunch of cables, intertwined together. So this is exactly this, right? Dependency hell. We have a convoluted mess of things which you cannot take out easily, any of those. You cannot replace any of those. And it's similar with software, where we have a lot of dependencies which we cannot extract or replace. And to me, that is a single most important benefit of Monorepo, is that it helps us to manage the dependency hell. How it can help us manage the dependency hell? There are a couple of things how it can help us. So with the dependency hell, you have such situations that you don't know which version to use. Let's suppose you want to consume some internal library from someone who made this at your company, but the version 2.2 has the function that you need, but has security vulnerability. Version 2.3 doesn't have the function that you need. Version 2.4 has the function that you need, but for some reason it throws on an error. Version 3.0 has the function that you need, it works, it doesn't have security vulnerability, but it requires upgrading the tool chain, which you cannot afford doing right now. And you are in the situation like, just give me one version that works. All I want to do is have something that works. And Monorepo helps with that approach, because since we are storing all the code or majority of the code in one repository, we can consume libraries from within the source code. So we are always using the latest version that is supposed to work. So that is, when it comes to consuming the libraries, one advantage. As publisher of the library, it's also easier for you to manage the libraries, because let's suppose you are making a change to some version of your library, and then you find out that someone who you didn't even know uses your library, complains that it's broken, and you need to fix that. So this is very painful. You have to manage your versions. Sometimes you need to do some maintain different major versions and cherry pick changes and so on, so on. With Monorepo, we've got a clear situation, because we are publishing the library just as a source code. If someone wants to use it, he can directly consume it from within the repository. And even if you are making any changes, your CI solution will tell you who are you breaking, how are you breaking him, and you can adjust your changes to account for that. And also the dependency management is simplified. I can say from practice that it works very well. For example, in our Monorepo, we have a common POM XML, which serves as a bill of materials. It has a large section of dependency management definition. And there we specify the particular versions of libraries that all the projects are supposed to use. So let's imagine this situation like there comes up a security vulnerability one time in some version of some library that you are using. You have just one single place where you can just upgrade it and get rid of the security vulnerability. So it's very, very convenient and very secure. Also, next benefit is that you are using opinionated set of libraries and particular versions. So if there are some, bugs or some corner cases, some things to be aware of in particular versions of libraries, you can share that expertise among the teams. So it's very convenient so that everyone is aware of certain rough edges that can appear in certain versions of certain libraries. So that's how Monorepo can help us with dependency hell. I can share one anecdote about dependency hell. So like with this situation that we've explored in the story, where in order to make a coffee, you suddenly need a hammer. One time when I was in one project, I saw that for making a simple one-off soap request, we were importing the whole soap UI library, which was like a few megabytes of size, and it brought a plethora of transitive dependencies. So it was kind of similar to this situation where in order to make the coffee, we suddenly need a hammer. All right, so we've established that consuming libraries, we make it easy in the Monorepo, but we need to be careful because suddenly one day you can wake up and for your POC library that you never intended to go public, you make a change and 400 services are breaking and people are complaining. So how can we avoid that? Fortunately, in state-of-the-art tools, like, for example, in our case, we were using Bazel, and Bazel tool allows us to specify the visibility of your package. So if I don't want anyone to use my package, I specify that, hey, it's private, no one should use it. However, after some discussion, let's suppose our friends from the Frober team decided, we decided that conceptually that this is a good idea for them to consume our library, then we can specify that our friends from Frober can use this library. So in general, this approach encourages us to have a dependency hygiene. For each dependency, we need to think carefully if we want it to be public or if we want anyone in specific to use it. All right, so let's go to the second advantage. And this is one of my favorites, which is atomic commits. So it helps us in situations like, for example, you have service A, service B, and they are talking to each other, but you want to change the authorization mechanism between those two. And let's suppose those projects, those services have different release cycle. One releases every week, and the other one releases every I don't know, month or a couple of months, and on different days, let's suppose. So in a standard scenario, you have to figure out what you need to do. You need to ensure backward compatibility in one of those services so that when the other is deployed, the communication still happens. You need to carefully plan this effort and which service deploys first, which second. And you throw away this backward compatibility after a couple of weeks when it's no longer needed. So you, in general, waste a lot of time doing that. However, in Monorepo, since we have common repository and common CI/CD solution, we can merge one atomic commit, making changes in both those services and push out those changes at once. That's why we don't have to ensure any backward compatibility, and we can have right away those changes. And large-scale refactoring, also very, very useful. So I can tell you on example, like recently we were upgrading the version of Spring Boot from 2.7 to 3.2 in our Monorepo. And it also was connected to, we had to upgrade the Java version in certain services. And we managed to do that in one go. We saved a lot of time, for coordinating, because rather than each team coordinating, planning, doing it for themselves, we just did it in one place in our team. And also, as we did this upgrade of Spring Boot 2.7 to 3.2, we developed expertise, some common scenarios, what needs to be changed, what methods should be changed, in general, what it takes to do this upgrade, which allowed us to do it much quicker rather than each team doing it for themselves. So I can say from practice that merging that huge PR, going from Spring Boot 2.7 to 3.2 was such a beautiful feeling in my heart. So yeah, that is a very, very great benefit. But it comes with one caveat that it can quickly, if you are making such a huge pull request, it can be difficult to review it. But you can mitigate it by using code owners, where you can specify code owners for each directory. If this directory is modified, then this particular group of people need to review and approve it. And also, if the changes are very complex, you can make it in incremental fashion, that step by step in commits, you are introducing the reviewer into what you are doing. So definitely those two are mitigating those challenges quite well. And the third advantage is consistency and standardization. And what I mean by that? So also speaking from example, in our Monorepo we have a dedicated initializer where you can, using a CLI tool, you can initialize a new service which has all of the necessary, structure that we established, all the necessary logging, monitoring, the configuration, deployment files, and so on, etc. And this has a couple of benefits. So one benefit, for example, it can be if you are making some automated changes. Like one time I had to upgrade the security policy in our deployment YAML files, and I was able to quickly do that using an automated Python script because we had this common structure of projects. So rather than handling, different corner cases, I could do this in a generic fashion. And also it has other benefits, like for example, if someone moves across teams or wants to make a contribution across the team, he already knows, where to search for certain things, and everything feels familiar because of that. So it's a very, very great benefit. So going further in detail about this, as I mentioned, with the service initializers, right away from the beginning, we enforce the similar structure. Also, we have a common development environment, which is based on Nix. We run things in Nix shell. Yeah, so I'm not sure how many of us are familiar with Nix. Okay, I see one person, but majority of us do not know what it is. So it's complex to explain. It has a couple of components, but one of those components is you can treat it as a package manager, which you can in a reproducible way define the tools that you need and have the reproducible environment between all the developer machines and also in the CI process. So it's also helpful to have the similar environment in local as well as on the CI, because you won't have to debug those kind of things that hey, it works on my local, why doesn't it work on CI? Yes, and that is great to have the common development environment because due to some differences in the tool versions, I don't know, the JDK versions, like Tomcat versions and so on, a lot of problems can happen. And this, as I mentioned, it's easier to move across teams and collaborate because we also encourage some common processes, like, for example, the code review process is exactly the same for each project inside the Monorepo. So if you want to move from one team to another, you already know what are the processes and how the things are done here. So there is no ramp-up time needed. Same formatting linting, no, you don't have to argue about which style is right. There's a central place where standards are enforced, and also helps with those automated scripted changes that I mentioned. Doing the CI/CD in the same way. So on this area, there is a save of effort because we do one CI/CD solution, right? A lot of times in organizations, there are hundreds of Jenkins instances. Each team configures it for their own. But with this approach, you can have one place where a dedicated team who has expertise develops this solution. And of course, it's going to be more complex because it's going to have to be one size fits it all. But at the end of the day, we do this once and without duplication and in the team who has the necessary expertise. Using similar libraries via common BOMs, this we touched upon already. You can have a common BOM bill of materials where we specify and enforce or encourage use of certain libraries and certain versions of libraries. This is very helpful. Like, for example, from practice, I can say that to a certain point we had like a couple of libraries for gRPC, and right now we settled on just one, which makes our life much easier. All right, so we explored some of the benefits of the Monorepo, but we need to also say about few challenges, because obviously it's not a golden bullet. The first challenge can be build time. If you are not careful, the build time can skyrocket. For starters, you have a larger repository, so the cloning of the repository, in your CI/CD can, at the very start, take longer. But there are ways to make it manageable. And I'm going to share how we are ensuring our builds are still performant. The first one is usage of right tools, particularly for caching and parallelization. We use Bazel tool, which to a high degree utilizes those two concepts, caching and parallelization. So it saves us quite a lot of time in building the services. Next one is building only affected projects. So as many organizations, many teams, once they start developing Monorepo, they use the naive approach of building everything for each commit. So let's suppose I'm making a pull request to change just one service. In the naive approach, I'm going to build everything. So that is not a good approach, obviously, for long term. And we need to ensure that only the affected projects are built. And Bazel, for example, allows us to do that, and other state-of-the-art tools allow us to do that. But we need to be aware that we need to use that. Optimizing processes and algorithms. So for making this one size fits all, there can be a lot of conditional logic. So we need to make sure that it's performant. And we need to ensure scalability to not let our users wait in the build queue for their build to start. So in our case, we are running those builds on GKE, which allows us to scale up. The second challenge, very big one, is how to handle top secret code, because Git doesn't have inherent mechanism of access control, right? I cannot specify that person this and this cannot view the project A or catalog A, right? So how do we overcome that? And there's not an easy answer here. You can do some workarounds like using the Git submodules or other advanced features of Git to hide a little bit certain parts of the code. But at the end of the day, we will be going against the entire spirit of Monorepo, which only thrives when you have the openness and collaboration, right? So if you have a lot of top secret code, you are not going to have a good time in the Monorepo. And the third challenge is complexity and friction. As I mentioned, in order to keep that Monorepo platform performant, we have to use some advanced tools like Bazel, or for example, in Git, we might have to introduce the concept of sparse checkout, which has its own big complexities. There, as I mentioned, there can be, a lot of conditional logics in some of our processes, and it can happen that some teams, some developers, say that, hey, this is making me unproductive. I was more productive before. So it was quite shocking to me as I first started, being involved in this Monorepo platform development, that, I'm doing something 8 hours a day, which at the end of the day, someone makes a comment that it's making them less productive. But the important realization here is that the idea is to move faster as a whole organization, rather than on individual level. On individual level, of course, there will be such situations where someone will be less productive. But if we are achieving our goal of making faster progress as an aggregate, then we won something. So it's a very important thing to keep in mind, because I was quite shocked at first. All right, having explored those disadvantages, let's view some lessons that I've learned during this Monorepo development that I wanted to share. If you decide to use this, you will be better prepared. How to make Monorepo work? The projects that you bring inside the Monorepo should have the high degree of healthiness. And what I mean by that is especially reproducible builds and tests. And why is that? Because in order to gain those advantages that Monorepo brings us, like those large-scale refactorings, I need to have a clear signal if I'm breaking your project or not. If some teams have unstable tests, or even worse, don't have them at all, then when I'm doing those large-scale refactorings, like I'm upgrading the Java version or something across all projects, then I can, by accident, break some project. And we want to avoid that and have the project be healthy and built and test passing at all the time. That's why we have to have reproducible builds and tests. And yeah, I can say from practice that we struggled with this for a while, but we made a deliberate effort to increase our stability of those builds and tests, and everything started working smoothly again. So it's a very, very important thing to keep in mind. And the next tip that I can give is that you don't have to go all in. And it might be tempting to bring all of your projects inside one Monorepo all at once. But the common consensus from what I've researched for people who were doing this is that it's better to start small. And I also find it to be the case. You can select a good subset of projects which has the stable tests, good quality, and you think they can benefit and they can adopt this collaborative and open spirit quickly. And you can work your way up, start bringing more and more projects to the Monorepo. And that's how we are doing it. And it allows us to do the growth of this Monorepo in a sustainable way. So that's my recommendation. The next recommendation is to provide trainings for the users of the Monorepo, which gonna be other teams, other developers. You will bring a lot of complex tools, like I mentioned, Bazel, some CI/CD solution, perhaps some complexity. So that's why you have to provide those trainings, because you have the know-how, you have the knowledge, so you can train your users upfront about those tools. And it will allow them to quickly gain up to speed, because at first, due to those complexities, they will have a productivity decline at first. And that's also important, that at first it's going to be less productive. but as they overcome those and learn this stuff, they will be more productive. And you need to provide the good support, because at the end of the day, it's going to be another dependency for those teams. You know, all of this tooling, all of those solutions, they will depend on it. So if you do not react quickly, they're going to waste time waiting for you to fix some problems. So it's very important to fix the issues right away as they appear. And also do some good research if the tooling that you have has the support for the monorepo, or has the functions that you need. So for example, I can say from practice that we used Bitbucket a while ago, and it was lacking some capabilities in the REST API for making our monorepo work. But recently we migrated to GitHub, so it's a different situation there. So do your due diligence and research if the tools that you are using are gonna have a possibility to work with monorepo. All right, what advantages can it bring in particular for Java? The first one, common bomb, we already said, single location of dependency versions, and also makes it easier to share expertise and share expertise about certain bugs and certain libraries. Easier debugging. So this I very benefited from during this Spring Boot upgrade that I mentioned, because if there was any problem after, you know, bumping the version of Spring Boot in one project, I already knew, you know, how to debug everything, you know, how to run acceptance tests, how to run unit tests. I already knew all of that, so it allowed me to quickly debug issues. Whereas if, you know, it was in separate repositories, separate processes, separate standards, it would have to be a mess to find out how to run tests and things like that. No dependency hell, maybe, you know, the dependency hell is easier to manage in the monorepo, and it's particularly prominent in, you know, open source technologies like Java, where we have a lot of libraries to choose from. And also, it allows us to encourage this dependency hygiene, which is also very beneficial. All right, so to fulfill that promise that I made at the beginning, that we're gonna know more when it's right to use the monorepo rather than the polyrepo approach, those are the questions that you need to ask. If you have a lot of top secret projects, you are going against the spirit of monorepo, so probably you're not gonna have a good time. If your projects don't have tests or have unstable tests, you're not gonna benefit as much from the monorepo, because you're not gonna be able to do large-scale refactorings, for example. You're not gonna have a clear signal if you are breaking anything with your large-scale refactorings. Do you use various technology stacks? I can say from practice that making just one language work with Bazel is a pain. So if you have a lot of languages, I don't know, Java, C++, Go, Python, Kotlin, PHP, if you have a lot of those, it's going to take a lot of time to integrate it in the tools for building monorepos, like, for example, Bazel. So I would say if your technology stacks are limited to the certain amount of languages, then it might be a good idea to use monorepo. And last question, is my organization ready? Because this approach will only thrive if you have a team of dedicated engineers who have the full-time responsibility for this monorepo. And if your teams can adopt this, you know, open and collaborative mindset, if they are okay with someone modifying their code, upgrading versions, and so on. All right, so as we walked through those cases, we learned a little bit more about what it takes to be like this chess grandmasters who can break the rules and gain advantage from that. So we are right now like tech giants like Google, Microsoft, Uber or other companies, and we know what it takes to make the Monorepo work. So with that, thank you very much. And I think we have 2 minutes left. So if there are any questions, I will be happy to answer. We have a question here.